Welcome back to Christian's Colloquy. I'm Christian, and I'm so glad that you could join me again this week. For today's show, we're going to be having our first ever episode where I recommend books. This is a new format that I discussed last time in my update, where I will be presenting various books that I've enjoyed on various topics that I think you, my viewers, might either enjoy, learn something from, or really appreciate as you research, discuss, and learn about various topics and issues. For our first episode in this new format, I'm going to be discussing books that I've read and enjoyed on the topic and, I guess, really big subject of Roman Catholicism. As I said, Roman Catholicism, big topic, very big. Thousands and thousands of books have been written on it by Roman Catholics, by others. So I'm going to specify that these recommendations I'm bringing today are contemporary Protestant resources and books on Roman Catholicism. That's pretty narrow, but as I will explain in a little bit, it's narrow for a reason. But before getting into those reasons and then presenting the books that I want to recommend, first let me address the issue of why you might want to study and learn about Roman Catholicism. As I have come to expect and learn, most of my viewers are indeed evangelicals like myself. And you could either be evangelical Baptists, Reformed evangelicals, Protestants of various denominations, but at the end of the day, most of us here, I believe, are evangelicals of some stripe. So, why should we care about or want to learn about Roman Catholicism? Let me give you 3 or maybe 4 reasons why you might end up wanting to learn about Roman Catholicism, which also speaks to why I have read these books and I have spent a great deal of time studying Roman Catholicism. First reason why is because maybe you know a Roman Catholic. Maybe you have an aunt who's Roman Catholic, maybe a parent or a sibling or a neighbor or a classmate, and you want to learn about Roman Catholicism because it will help you as you interact with them, as you discuss and maybe share your faith and faith traditions with them, and as you interact with them on religious topics and theological questions or even moral and philosophical issues. The second reason why you might want to learn about Roman Catholicism is because you're aware that it is quite a presence in some of your circles. I know many of my viewers, like myself, are online a lot in various theological and Christian chat rooms, and a big presence in these chat rooms are Roman Catholics. And these Roman Catholics, very smart people are often trying to share their faith, discuss the differences between Protestantism and evangelicalism and Roman Catholicism, and maybe you want to learn more so that you can better engage in these conversations, and maybe in return share about your faith and why you hold to it with such conviction. A third reason why you might want to learn about Roman Catholicism is just because you're living in the West. You're living in the West or the English-speaking world, and the reality is that Roman Catholicism is one of the major religious groups in our world, in our lives, in our communities. That's a reality, certainly for me where I live, where growing up, most of my friends were Roman Catholic. I attended Roman Catholic schools, and I come from a family that has many members who are in Roman Catholicism, and that was just a reality. The people around me, as I would meet people, talk with people, share my faith, I discovered there were plenty of Roman Catholics, and I wanted to learn more about them. A final reason and fourth reason why you might want to learn about Roman Catholicism is maybe you're someone who's interested in joining or exploring that religion. A lot of people in recent days, as they've encountered Roman Catholicism, as they've heard many great Roman Catholic speakers and theologians speak about their faith, the reasons for holding it, they now have questions about it. Why am I not Roman Catholic? Why are people choosing to become Roman Catholic? And all sorts of types of things. So maybe you're someone looking into Roman Catholicism because you have a newfound interest in it, either academic or maybe religious, and you're thinking about those kind of questions. So with that said, there are plenty of good reasons to learn about Roman Catholicism. I think fundamentally, as I shared in 2 of those things, just us probably knowing a Roman Catholic friend or family member and just living in the Western English-speaking world, it's good to know a little bit about Roman Catholicism. It's all around us, and it's something that we should be prepared to interact with as evangelicals. So to that end, I want to discuss some resources that have helped me. But again, before I get there, I should mention that these resources I present, modern or contemporary Protestant works on Catholicism, are not the only resources out there. There are plenty of great places where you can look and plenty of great books in different sort of genres where you can read about Roman Catholicism. Some of the greatest places to learn about Roman Catholicism are in books or perhaps podcasts or even in sermons posted and written by Roman Catholics themselves. In a lot of ways, if you're intending to learn about Roman Catholicism or any other religion or political idea or social thought, you should go to the people who espouse it so that you could hear from themselves what they believe, what they teach, and what they understand. This, of course, is a foundational place, but it's, again, not the only place. Another great place to learn about Roman Catholicism is from the works of the past, Protestant works of the past. Roman Catholicism and Protestantism, as you're probably aware, have existed alongside each other for as long as these two groups have really existed. If we're tracing their origins, the modern Roman Catholic Church, we're typically looking back to the Council of Trent, which was a response to the Protestant Reformation. So these two groups have often been the two opposing forces in a lot of narratives. And of course, because of that, Protestants throughout history, whether they're Anglican, Dutch Reformed, Lutheran, Mennonite, all these groups have addressed the issue of Roman Catholicism, why they're not Roman Catholic and why they are whatever they are. So that's another place. A third place that you might learn about Roman Catholicism is, of course, from speaking directly to Roman Catholics. Maybe it's not the theologian who has a podcast or the author who has tons of books on Roman Catholicism, but of course you can talk to the Roman Catholics in your life, hear what they have to say for themselves, and often this is a great way to learn about Roman Catholicism because you'll find out that really, Roman Catholics have quite a diverse set of beliefs that they can and often do hold to. Your Roman Catholic neighbor might hold very different beliefs than your local Roman Catholic priest, or the Roman Catholic theologian who hosts a podcast that you're familiar with. So, those are some other places, but today, a fourth place you can learn about Roman Catholicism, where I want to recommend some books, are from contemporary Protestant figures. So with that said, I'm going to dive into these resources. I believe I have 6 of them, and I'm going to be talking about what these resources have to offer, what I've read from them and what I appreciate about them, and what you might learn from them. So with all that said, let me dive into these contemporary Protestant sources on Roman Catholicism. So the first place I want to begin is with this shorter little book. This is by William Webster, a name that's going to come up, I think, at least one more time on this list, and it's called Salvation, the Bible, and Roman Catholicism. Let me hold it up here so that you can take a look. And this book, again, shorter, is fantastic because it really gets into what the Roman Catholic Church teaches from its own official documents and dogmas. So as I mentioned, Roman Catholics can believe a wide variety of things. As you are familiar with every religion, a lot of people in the pew, a lot of lay people might not even be familiar with what their own church officially teaches. So this book really gets into what do Roman Catholics believe as according to their official dogmas and documents. So that's what makes this book super helpful. It really goes directly to the sources, the Catechism of the Catholic Church, the various councils and their decrees and canons, and lets you know what Roman Catholics believe specifically on the issues of salvation and the Bible. Of course, the Bible being short for authority. And what this book does, in addition to sharing those sources, what Roman Catholicism officially teaches, it comes with Webster's own commentary on each of those, where he finds it at odds with the biblical doctrines and where Protestants would disagree, and of course put forward what we believe, what evangelicals believe is the correct doctrine on salvation and the Bible. Very important resource. Something I appreciate, as we're going to note with another one of these figures, is that William Webster, the guy writing this book and putting this together, actually himself comes out of a very devout Roman Catholic background. So he has first-hand insight into what Roman Catholics are thinking and believing. He opens up by introducing that he grew up Roman Catholic and was hearing Roman Catholic people saying things that he believed were wrong according to the church's teaching, and really gets into how we need to know what Rome officially teaches so that we might respond to it as evangelical Protestants. Great book, a shorter book, highly recommend it. The second book I'm going to recommend is this one. It's a bigger one, hits the same sort of notes, but this one's called Catholicism, East of Eden. The subheading, Insights into Catholicism for the 21st Century, and that's by Richard Bennett. I'll hold it up here. What makes this book good, again, is that it gets into what Roman Catholics today are believing. And that's a theme that's going to come up in your conversations and research into Roman Catholicism as you realize the Roman Catholic Church of today is a very different church theologically, socially, and culturally compared to the Roman Catholic Church of maybe the 1870s, the 1770s, going all the way back to the Council of Trent in the 16th century. Roman Catholicism has changed, and this book really tries to speak to what Roman Catholicism looks like in the 21st century. And unlike salvation, the Bible and Roman Catholicism, this gets into various issues. It talks about the Roman Catholic Mass, what they believe there today, their doctrines and dogmas of Mary, the Mother of God, what they believe about her and how that relates to their official dogmas. So, very helpful book, gets into those issues, helping you understand what Roman Catholicism is officially today, both on the sides of what they officially teach, but also what plenty of people are believing. And it gets into a little bit of how that has changed and how that competes and disagrees with Roman Catholicism as it was presented and taught in previous decades and centuries. Very helpful. And Richard Bennett, the guy who wrote this, was actually a Roman Catholic priest himself. So again, firsthand knowledge and insight that he then allows to flow out into this book. This book reads a lot more like a book where you're interacting, while Salvation, the Bible, and Roman Catholicism is a little more like a manual or outline. This one reads like a book with personal stories, anecdotes filling in the pages as well. Catholic Controversy by James White. James White might be a figure that you're familiar with. Here's the book. He is a apologist today who has a pretty famous podcast with Alpha and Omega Ministries called The Dividing Line, and he has debated Roman Catholics in various places on various doctrines, and he has written a few books on the topic. He has one specifically on Mary, one on Scripture alone, defending that, and of course this more general one. This book is incredibly helpful if you're in a conversation with a Roman Catholic and they are trying to convince you of Roman Catholicism. This book goes over their various typical lines that they will try to present to evangelicals to show them the merits of their church opposed to evangelicalism. And this book, The Roman Catholic Controversy, shows how we might respond to those questions, how we might think about them, and that we might understand where those questions come from. So, for example, this book responds to the issue of Matthew 16:18, and that famous passage that Roman Catholics will often cite to evangelicals about Peter receiving the keys, Peter being the rock upon which Christ will build his church, and how that might relate to the doctrine of the papacy and papal supremacy. Here in this book, it goes over how that interpretation isn't patristic and it isn't faithful to the biblical text, and why evangelicals should and can easily respond to claims about Peter and the papacy and apostolic succession which flow out of that verse from Roman Catholics and their use of it. So great book, replies and responds and really digs into some of those classic Roman Catholic apologetic lines trying to convince evangelicals of Roman Catholicism. Great book if you're interacting with a Roman Catholic who's trying to win you out of evangelicalism into Roman Catholicism. Another book to that end that I would recommend is The Church of Rome at the Bar of History, again by William Webster. This book is fantastic. This really gets into the history of the Roman Catholic Church. For those who are unaware, a lot of Roman Catholicism rests on its historical claims. Its claims to be the one true church that Christ founded, that can trace its leadership, its bishops and popes and archbishops, all the way back to the apostles through apostolic succession, and how that apostolic succession comes alongside this body of doctrine which it has defended and promoted with absolute consistency and all sorts of things related to that. This book shows how the Roman Catholic Church throughout history cannot hold up and cannot match its own claims, that throughout history it really has fallen short of its own claims, and how that really weakens its entire identity just from looking at its own history. So again, if you're a person who's engaging with a Roman Catholic, who's trying to win you to Roman Catholicism based upon their historical claims, based upon their claims of having a connection to history that evangelicals can't claim, this is the book that you'll want to read. If you're a person, an evangelical, who's considering Roman Catholicism based on its historical claims, really I encourage you, check out this book. This is the one you want to read. This addresses those questions you're probably asking. Another fantastic book, which is a totally different genre and tone from the others, is Far from Rome, Near to God. And as the subheading says, it is the testimony of 50 converted Catholic priests. This book is fantastic as, again, it's 50 Catholic priests sharing their stories as they left Roman Catholicism and came into evangelicalism. If you're wondering what that looks like, how God calls people out of Roman Catholicism into evangelical churches, this book really tells you how he does it throughout various cultures and parts of the world with men of various backgrounds, both in terms of ethnicity, education, and class, and everything else in between. Fantastic book if you're wondering what conversion looks like for a Roman Catholic. And of course, them being priests, it tells you these men were committed to the system. Whether they were fully on board or not, that's something you have to read, but it really lets you into the inside of the heads of those leaders of Roman Catholicism, those shepherds in Roman Catholicism, as they encounter the gospel of Jesus Christ in its purity, as they learn about salvation, justification, being by faith through grace alone. Truly a fantastic book, great biographies, great men to learn about in here as they relate to your study of Roman Catholicism. The final book that I'm going to recommend is Are We Together? A Protestant Analyzes Roman Catholicism. This one's by R.C. Sproul, who recently went home to be with the Lord, but he, in his time, wrote this book as it was, there was quite a stir in the evangelical world, let's say. Many prominent evangelical leaders, one being the recently deceased J.I. Packer, had joined together with Roman Catholics in a movement, in a group, in a meeting called Evangelicals and Catholics Together, ECT. And in this book, R.C. responds to that movement, showing how that was not a good movement. J.I. Packer and those other evangelicals should not have come together with Roman Catholics to form such a movement. So in this book, he responds to those questions, those doctrines, those dogmas, those differences that really show that evangelicals and Roman Catholics are not on the same page when it comes to so many important issues. One of those questions you might be having or have faced is, what is the difference between evangelicals and Roman Catholics? We're aware that we do have differences, but are they that big of a deal? Are we just churches who disagree on a few minor things but share the core? Are we churches that share the core but just look different on the outside? R.C., I believe in this book, responds to those questions and effectively shows that there are major, very real, very gospel issues that divide Roman Catholics and evangelicals, issues that are worth exploring. And as I say that with all due respect to my Roman Catholic friends and family. Roman Catholics are not dumb people as evangelicals are often caught saying or thinking. You could be a very smart Roman Catholic. There are many thousands of Roman Catholics who are smarter than me, but I do believe, as R.C. shows, there are very real differences that are life and death spiritually, and they are worth addressing and worth honestly learning about them so that we might dialogue properly and respectfully about them. Truly, it's a great topic, but one where books like these can really help us have excellent conversations and avoid talking past one another or talking in ways where we can't understand each other. So these are my books that I recommend on Roman Catholicism. Again, very specifically, these are contemporary Protestant sources on Roman Catholicism. There are many other resources I could recommend, and as always, I want to share that there are great other places that you can find resources. But in closing now, those are my recommendations. I just want to give a couple of brief notes. First of all, if you're an evangelical who is wondering about Roman Catholicism, who might be wrestling with the merits of Roman Catholicism, the best way to defend your faith, to share your faith, and to hold on to your faith isn't to read these books that are critiquing Roman Catholicism, but rather it is to better understand your own faith. And how do you do that? What does that mean? Be an evangelical who is rooted in the Word of God. Let that be your first place you go to if you have questions about faith or if you're wondering about your evangelical faith. Secondly, be an evangelical who is committed to the local church. The best defense of your faith, the best place to learn about your faith so that you might share it with others, is under the preaching of faithful pastors and ministers of the Word. Be an evangelical committed to the Word read and to the Word preached. Finally, if you're wanting to respond to Roman Catholicism, learn more about their arguments and how you might be able to debate them or defend the evangelical faith against them, reading the Church Fathers will be a great place to go to. Many of the Roman Catholic arguments against Protestantism, evangelicalism, and the Baptist tradition come from their use of the Church Fathers, claiming that they support their side of things and totally defeat our side. I highly recommend read the Church Fathers for yourself, learn about patristics. I'll leave a couple of resources down below I recommend you check out on that front, and understand that church history, the Church Fathers aren't enemies of evangelicalism. They're actually great resources, part of our history that we might use to support, bolster, and better understand our own faith. That's it for today's episode. I hope that you enjoyed this format. I'll continue to work on it, get better at it, and come back with more books on more topics so that you can study and get into these topics for yourself going forward. That's it. I look forward to seeing you here next time on Christian's Colloquy. Take care.